Hello and welcome to the film review here on BBC News, and to take us through this week's cinema releases is of course Mark Kermode. So Mark, what do we have this week?
A mixed bag as always. We have Trance, which is the new film by Danny Boyle, who I think at the moment is most famous for having directed the Olympic 2012 opening and then afterwards turning down a great honour. He said no, he just wanted to be an ordinary man of the people, which has endeared him to almost everybody. G.I. Joe, which is yet another film from the Hasbro Stadium. Can action stars play action figures in 3D? And then Good Vibrations, which is the true life story of Terry Hooley, who is Belfast's godfather of punk, the man who discovered Rudy the Outcast and, of course, the Undertones.
So, Danny Boyle and Trance.
Danny Boyle is an extraordinary filmmaker. If you look back over his career, you know, Shallow Grave, Train Spotting, A Life Less Ordinary, 28 Days Later, Sunshine. I mean, a really, really extraordinary career. Then, of course, he went off and did the London 2012 opening, which was a really remarkable piece of theatre. I think pretty much everybody saw it. Extraordinary. Whilst he was doing that, he was also making Trance around the edges of it. He shot Trance before he did the ceremony, and they edited it afterwards. The way he described Trance was, he said, all the dark stuff that they couldn't put into the opening ceremony, they put into Trance. Because clearly when you're doing the opening ceremony, you know, you have to fulfil many masters, and you have to, you know, you have to be very sort of well-behaved to some extent. So what we now have is this, I think, delightfully unruly thriller. It is basically a strange hybrid between, on the one hand, a caper heist movie about stealing a work of art. On the other hand, it's a psychological thriller in the manner of something like Inception or Memento. The story is that James McAvoy is the inside man who helps to steal a painting. However, he then gets banged on the head and can't remember where the painting has gone. Vincent Cassel is the mob boss who really wants him to remember and sends him to Rosario Dawson. Rosario Dawson is a hypnotherapist who takes him within the labyrinthine corridors of his mind in a series of trances in order to find the painting. Very soon, you don't know what's real and what's imagined. Let's see a clip.
Hello?
It's me.
Simon?
Where are you?
I'm at Frank's house.
Jesus, what are you doing there?
Elizabeth, they're going to kill me.
No.
No, they are. You were right. This is what they always planned to do.
You see, this is why I had to hide the painting.
Simon, calm down. Where are you now?
I'm in the hallway. The doors are locked.
All the doors are locked.
Go upstairs to Frank's bedroom.
There's a pool and a hallway. Do you see the bedside table?
Yes.
Open the drawer. No, the lower one.
So you get the kind of tone from that. I mean,
I like the tone.
It looks absolutely beautiful. Anthony Dog shot it, and I mean, it looks terrific. And I mean, on one hand, obviously there are nods towards Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, that kind of film. Actually, because it's written by John Hodge, it bears a relationship to Shallow Grave, you know, Danny Boyle's first feature film. It's basically about the relationship between three characters, all of whom are fundamentally untrustworthy, you know, none of whom you're exactly right-footed by. And also, of course, Danny Boyle is fascinated by time, and he's a big fan of Nick Rogue. And if you look at this next to some of Nick Rogue's films, like Don't Look Now, you can see where a lot of the inspiration has come from. I have to say, I don't think it's a particularly substantial work, but I'm not sure that it wants to be. It's a film which goes inside people's minds, but most of it is on the surface. But what a surface it is. I mean, if from just a purely cinematic point of view, from watching somebody who understands how to put music and images together, from watching somebody who really knows how to make a narrative drive along, it's a very well executed piece. It's also quite naughty, it's quite rude, it's quite ripe, I mean quite overripe, and I think some people have criticised it saying, well, you know, it's not very naturalistic. It's not meant to be naturalistic. It looked to me like Danny Boyle had said, okay, I've done the Olympics, now I'm going to get this out of my system, I'm going to enjoy myself. It's got many twists in it which are, I think, you know, fun. I don't know in the end that they add up to that much, but certainly whilst I was enjoying it, whilst I was watching it, it was very distractingly enjoyable, and the surface sheen is beautiful.
Because you talked about some criticising it. I mean, I'd got three critics in front of me here. Two
Other
didn't
critics.
like it. Other critics. Lesser critics.
Yes, other opinions are available.
Two didn't like it, and one did.
Yeah, I have to say, I really enjoyed it. I mean, I have read a couple of negative reviews and thought, well, that's not really the point. The point is, it really looks like somebody letting off steam after having dealt with the pressure cooker of doing something as important, as significant, as responsible as the Olympic opening. I mean, actually, I do think the two things make a nice little double bill, but also, as I said, the comparison between this and Shallow Grave is not to be missed.
I suspect there might be a more unanimous view forming around G.I. Joe Retaliation.
Yes, G.I. Joe Retaliation in 3D. It was yet another movie based on, basically a game, and, we have on the one hand The Rock, and we have Bruce Willis, and I would start to describe the plot to you, but there's no point other than to say it's a lot of people running around, blowing up a bunch of stuff, stopping every now and then to have very well orchestrated martial arts set pieces. The extraordinary thing about the film is that for a film with this much action, this much explosion, this much stuff going on, it really is astonishing just how boring it is. The screening that I saw, they had some trouble at the beginning getting the film going, and for a long time I thought the film's never going to start, and then when it did start I thought it's never going to end. It's like this really painfully boring 90-odd minutes of running, jumping, shouting, shooting, blowing stuff up. And I speak as somebody who, I like a good action movie. This is not a good action movie. It is dunderheaded, it is thick-headed, it's kind of talking down to its audience in the most patronising way. And the best I can say about it is that there is one moment in it where there's a kind of quite highly orchestrated action set piece, a martial arts set piece, in which I thought that would be quite good if I hadn't already seen it in the trailer.
At the risk of asking a question about the plot, what's the significance of the word retaliation? What are they retaliating against?
Pretty much
is that never clear?
Pretty much everything, but I'll tell you this. If you live in London, London is dealt with in a way which is enormously... When at one point, basically, London is wiped off the planet, but no one really minds, because it doesn't matter. None of the major stars are involved in that.
OK, shall we move on?
Yes.
Good Vibrations.
One of my favourites this has been around now for pretty much a year, and it's a terrific true story of Terry Hooley, the godfather of Belfast punk. He was a guy who basically ran a record store and decided that the way to a non-sectarian future was to enjoy and explore music. And he found suddenly this liberating moment when he was at a punk gig. He went to see, I think it was Rudy, and suddenly he thought, punk is the future. I'm going to start a record label that are going to release punk records, because he knew nothing about running a record label. He cared nothing about money, incidentally, which is a bit of a problem if you're running a record label. And he started putting these bands onto records and famously got the Undertones to record Teenage Kicks, and then struggled to get the Undertones the airplay that they needed. A moment which finally was broken when John Peel, our very own John Peel, put the Undertones on the radio. Here's a clip.
Isn't that the best thing you've ever heard? It's so good, I'm going to do something I've never done before.
So hard to beat. Every time she walks down the street, another girl in the neighborhood. When she was mad, she looked so good. I wanna hold her tight. Get teenage kicks right through the night. I'm gonna call her on the telephone.
You can tell from that clip just the sort of, what a joyful film
I love
it is.
the details of the era as well.
Yeah, no, the period details are great. The thing I really like about this movie is it's very easy to get pop movies wrong, because it's quite hard to capture on film what it is about a great pop record. If you look at a film like the Buddy Holly story, I think that does it very well. If you look at, actually, Slade in Flame, I think, is a great pop movie. What this manages to do is to encapsulate that strange joy, the moment that pop music gets something completely right. It has at its centre, great heartfelt performances. I mean, it's a true story. It's about something. It has substance. I mean, it deals with, social issues, but it deals with them in a way which is really easy to relate to. And what it does is, it reminds you that when pop music works and when it really can sort of bridge social divides, but at no point do you ever feel that you're being lectured or spoken to, sternly. It's a film which says, look, this stuff is great. These characters are, in many ways, he doesn't know how to run a record label. His wife is off having babies whilst he's doing this stuff. He's irresponsible, and there's so many things about him that would be infuriating. And yet, at the heart of it all is this belief that this music will change the world. I mean, I watched the film with a smile on my face the whole way through. I cried twice, and both times it was tears of joy. And every time I hear a clip from it, or I hear that record, I just want to see the film again. It would be lovely if it was a hit, because it was, I think it was a hard job for them to make it. It was, it's made on a very small budget, and it really deserves to find an audience. It's one of those films like Made in Dagenham for me, an important story, really well told.
What about capturing the backdrop of the political events of the time? How much does it achieve that?
It does it really well, because it doesn't push that stuff into your face. I mean, it is right there in the background. It's very important that what he's doing is, working across the divides. And, every now and then it feels like it has to explicitly acknowledge that background, but it's really done as part of the ongoing story of a man and his music. And I think the best thing about it is that it manages to deal with those issues without ever looking like it sat down and going, right, well, now we need to deal with this very important political. I mean, it's a joy. It's a real pleasure to watch. It's got real heart and soul. And, I mean, I can't recommend it highly enough. I just hope that it finds its audience.
I mean, the other interesting thought about that, of course, is if you were trying to break through as a band in Northern Ireland at a time when Northern Ireland was in the state it was, and make the rest of the United Kingdom take note, it was very hard to do that. Very,
very hard. And actually, that's one of the things that the film covers really nicely, is this idea about it's a little homegrown industry that's trying to break out, that's trying to, find its way in the large world. And, of course, the terrific thing is, Terry Healy doesn't really know what he's doing. I mean, he just, sort of shambles from one semi-chaotic event to the next, and yet somehow it all has some kind of grand plan behind it, which is bigger than any of them. And as I said, it does that thing about capturing the moment of pop music. And it's really hard to do on film. I mean, people think that pop music on film is easy. It's not. It's really difficult. It's really, really difficult, and they do it terrifically well.
OK, 2 hits, 1 not. What's the best one out there at the moment, do you think?
There's a film out at the moment called Reality, which is directed by Matteo Garrone, who directed Gomorrah, and it's a sort of a fable about reality television, about a man who has a life which appears to be very vibrant and, full of life and love, and he becomes sidetracked by an obsession with reality television. And as a result of this, his life kind of collapses around him. The whole world appears to contract until it becomes nothing more than a huge reality TV set. It's interesting. It's fairly soft. I mean, if you look at something like Gomorrah, which was a very, very tough watch, it has a sentimental streak, but I think its sentimentality is very well judged, because what it does is it's about the way in which people get entranced, people get captured, people get literally sort of led almost towards the light. I mean, there are recurrent shots of our central character gazing up towards this television, literally like the rabbit caught in the proverbial headlights. I liked it very much. Some people were unsatisfied by the ending, not me. I thought it was a very good piece of work. I have to say, for the record, I'm not a fan of reality television, so it may be that it was playing to the choir, as far as I'm concerned, but I thought it played to the choir very well.
I can't believe you haven't watched Big Brother in your time.
I haven't. Oh, no, I did when Ken Russell was on it. I beg your pardon. No, I did. OK, fine, yeah.
Anyway, the best DVD.
Sightseers, which is from Ben Wheatley. This is a sort of a very, very dark comedy. I've compared it in the past to Nuts in May with axes, the Mike Lee television play. Essentially, the story of 2 people in a caravan travelling around the countryside and on a killing spree. And it's, as I said, it's one of those things that you start off laughing, you start off finding it, really fun, and then the laughter becomes sort of more and more grotesque. I mean, Ben Wheatley, who made it before, made Kill List, which is one of the most creepy horror movies I've seen in a really long time. Incredible claustrophobic atmosphere to it. This, I thought, was very well pitched, because it is very hard to get that balance between laughter and revulsion right. I mean, interestingly enough, Ben Wheatley himself cites Alan Clark rather than Mike Leigh as his primary influence, but I think there is a strain of Mike Leigh in there. But it does that very British thing of depicting being in a caravan as essentially a rather crazy thing to do, and it just pushes the craziness a little bit further than normal.
OK, good stuff. A quick reminder before we go, you can get more on Mark's reviews on his blog. That's Kermode Uncut, and that's at bbc.co.uk/Mark Kermode. That's it for this week, though, so thanks for watching, thanks to Mark, and goodbye.